wanted to just start off by saying thank you for coming to hear us out a little bit on somewhat short notice. Claude and I spoke last week and really felt like it may not feel like January is right around the corner. We have some real planning that we need to do in order for us to be as well prepared for the interscholastic sports season or seasons next semester as possible. And we just wanted to start the conversation right now and just make sure that we begin on the right foot. So first and foremost, once again, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time to visit with us, but also thank you for your trust in us. I really appreciate the fact that we've got so many kids coming to school every day with some semblance of normalcy. We continue to have really good results in terms of our testing protocols. Our test positivity rate is south of 1% campus wide. And so we continue to be in a very well managed risk situation at the moment. You know, we want everybody to be as healthy as possible. And so far, the community has done a really great job. I also want to say thank you for students, anybody who might be in attendance or here or listening right now. I think it's just been remarkable how well the students have done in terms of following our protocols and procedures. We were worried when we first started laying plans, and the students have really risen to the occasion. So we're really proud of them. Really, I mostly wanted to start off before I turn the topic of athletics over to Mr. Grubair. I wanted to start off really just sort of by reminding everybody that all of this work regarding the pandemic and regarding risk mitigation is ongoing. We didn't just write a COVID handbook and a COVID appendix and put it on the shelf and move forward. We have been in an ongoing process of revising, of taking multiple looks at our procedures and our protocols and making sure that whatever we're doing not only what is asked of us by the Southern Nevada Health District and the CDC, but also raising the bar on that, right? We hold ourselves to the highest possible standards in the classroom, on the playing fields, and when it comes to mitigating risk in this regard. So please understand that we're still moving forward. And you can see that by the fact that we currently have 3 different modes of testing on our campus. One is the PCR testing that we started months ago. The other one is the group testing that we started with student athletes last week, and we will continue this week and iron out the kinks as a pilot project. Finally, we've got a third, which is a device, a non-invasive device that we're helping to pilot with an organization out of South Florida that's called the COVID Plus device. And so we're really trying to do everything we can to be best in class and making sure that we're taking care of kids and their health and safety. And frankly, everything that we're doing is also aimed at protecting the health, safety, and risk mitigation for our faculty and staff and their families, right? As we've said many times, we're all in this together. And so we have to continually update our protocols and our procedures. I've also, in the last 2 weeks, excuse me, I've also been in contact with the president of the Las Vegas Raiders. I have been in contact with the athletic director for UNLV, just comparing notes, picking their brains on how best to manage sports moving forward. I think that we have a little bit of a different opportunity because we hold ourselves to such high standards to really compare ourselves to the very best in the world, not just those in our conference or those in our state. So I'm having those conversations to see how the professional athlete realm is managing these things, and then to see how student athletes are being cared for and managed in terms of the higher education realm. And I think that we're doing a really good job thus far, but I think that we can learn a few things. Finally, I want you to know that I continue to have ongoing meetings with my medical task force. And that is comprised of a group of doctors who are both board members and then some community members. That is epidemiologists, that is pediatric infectious disease docs. That is a random assortment of different folks who can give us great advice on how to continue to run the safest campus that we possibly can. But that said, new information is going to make us respond in new ways. And I think we're going to need to shift our approach to provide the very best experience that we possibly can. Starting interscholastic sports in the fall throws us a little bit of a curveball, right? That is going to expose our students to groups of people that they wouldn't otherwise be exposed to in the scholastic realm. So we feel like we need to address that because this does present a change, and we can't just move forward as though nothing is changing when new information and new procedures are presented to us. So before I move on and ask Mr. Grubair to move into the athletics portion of the evening, I just want to remind you that the three pillars that we've been operating under from the very beginning, and we continue to operate under, is first, risk mitigation. We're going to do everything we can to keep students as healthy as we possibly can, and thereby keep the families as healthy as we possibly can. And that is because, number two, we believe that an in-person school experience is superior to a remote experience. And we believe that a Meadows education is best delivered in person. So therefore, we'd like to keep school open to deliver that educational experience the very best that we can in person. And finally, one of our guiding principles is that we believe that a Meadows education is incomplete without arts and athletics and the other ancillary programs that go with it. It's why Mr. Ronquillo and Ms. Larson have worked so hard this week to make sure that the kids had something similar to a homecoming week, even though we couldn't have a homecoming game or a homecoming dance. We're trying our best to approximate the entirety of the Meadows School experience, and that's going to include athletics if we can pull it off and do it in a way that satisfies, number one, which is risk mitigation, and number two, which is keeping kids in class. Okay, so that's sort of the order. We find these things to be really important, and we're dedicated to keeping the totality of the TMS experience intact as much as we can. Okay, so I just wanted to leave you with those thoughts. And the work is ongoing. If you have any thoughts or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me directly. I know Ms. Larson's door is open to you, and I know I'm not speaking out of turn to say that Mr. Grubair is happy to hear from you from an athletic perspective as well. And so with that, Claude, I'm happy to turn the athletic portion of things over to you.
Thank you. Why we felt it was important is last Friday, we received basically the last green light to inform us that the NIAA is going forward. And so we need to start preparing for everything that's potentially going to happen here. We got to be able to understand how we're going to expand our testing protocols. We are currently looking and evaluating how we're going to go forward with the mask wearing. And I'm going to explain all this. We're going to be talking about team travel. I would say that right now we have over 60% of our schedules complete. We're still working through a few things, but with that said, one of the priorities that we had that we've been trying to operate with is to try to minimize travel up from our end this year. And in a 6-week season, we have pushed as much as we could. We've asked that we hope be the host of the majority of these events, but there will be some travel. We are in a league that is spread throughout the state, and we're working on how that travel is going to look during that time. We have to also consider the effects that playing sports against other schools is going to have on the rest of our upper school community and the community as a whole. One of the very delicate issues here is who's going to be permitted to come to games when they do happen on campus. So let me start by saying that when it comes to the testing protocols, we've been working very hard, and it really is out of almost all of our area of expertise. But because of the challenges that we are facing, we've all had to become as close to an expert of what we're doing in this area as possible. And I can tell you that I have been speaking to about 12 schools, 12 people that I know that are spread out throughout the country, and trying to find out what they're doing. Some that are not having sports at all this year, some that are waiting the way we are, some that have been full go since the beginning of the school year, to find out, what challenges lay ahead here. I spoke to an athletic director yesterday who said they are starting their volleyball playoffs this Wednesday. And I said, well, how did your season go? How many games did you play? He said, our team is 2-0. He said, we had 14 games canceled in our season. So we're starting the playoffs having played 2 games. And they were trying to play in the state of Florida, and the cancellations were just weekly. And we saw it across the board in many sports. So we have to be prepared for what could potentially happen. But let's assume everything goes really well and it doesn't happen. I asked every one of them what they're doing in terms of testing, and some are doing a little testing, some are doing no testing, and some are kind of in the middle of that. What I realized that nobody's doing what we're doing of anyone I've spoken to. The fact that we have two pre-screening tests and a PCR test offered to our community is an incredible thing that the school and Mr. Gregerson has provided us. And I here to ask and to tell you that when come the start of the sports season, in order to do this as well as we can, we are going to be having to shift, and we have to think about this. It is very possible we're going to have to shift from a voluntary to a mandatory process. This is an ongoing conversation right now, but we're taking it that serious that to participate in an interscholastic sport for us, it's very likely that it will go from a voluntary to a mandatory process. So think about that. We wanted you to have time to understand what we're facing here. The two pre-screeners, so one of them is one that the kids are spitting into vials. I'm sure that those that have started, it's not that difficult for the kids, but it's a challenge for us to administer, but we feel it's important. And so we're going to continue doing it. The other one is a non-invasive one that we literally put on your arm for 2.5 minutes. And it comes up with the same result of that. It's just a lot quicker. We can get the results instantly, where the other one will take about 24 hours to get. We want to continue to look at the accuracy of these things. So in order to be able to push towards taking the main test, which is the PCR test. Parents have come to me and written me that their concern is that if somebody tests positive within the pool, that the whole group has got to go. The idea of having these pool tests is to do the opposite, is if someone tests positive, we not only retest that one, but we are able to continue to test the others. So if they continue to test negative, they don't have to go in quarantine. That's the idea of having these opportunities. And we've got to get to a point where we have a higher level of involvement in this, because what we're doing now is trying to figure out how to perfect the administering of these tests, and we haven't done that yet. But in order to not interfere with the seasons, with practices, and with games, we want to be able to understand the best format to do that. So that I ask you to look at the emails that I have been sending and to look at the permission forms. And I ask you to now to try to get a few more people to get involved in this, because at some point we feel in order to protect our community, and look, a priority is to play. We want to play, the kids want to play. We don't want any more of this taken away from them. But we're not going to measure ourselves to what other schools are doing. And we're even going to go above and beyond what the NIAA is asking us for your protection, for your family's protection, and for the school's protection. So we have to continue to emphasize that. Yes.
Just I don't think it's possible to belabor this point. I think that it needs to be stated and restated that the testing procedures and protocols are to keep kids on campus and to keep them playing, not to quarantine them unnecessarily. So we will be following contact tracing procedures and quarantining appropriately. But the idea here, like I said before, is risk mitigation. But the second thing is keeping kids on campus and keeping the doors open. The fastest way for us to shut down athletics, the fastest way for us to shut down the upper school, is to have an undetected positivity that spreads like wildfire through our upper school. And what we're doing is trying to prevent that so we can actually keep kids on campus. Like Claude, I've heard some of the same things, that parents are a little bit concerned because they don't want to jeopardize a team, or they don't want to jeopardize their kids' experience at school, or the grades experience, or the upper school's experience. And we're aiming at doing exactly the opposite of that. We want to know that we're keeping everybody as healthy as we can, and to keep school in session and athletes on the field.
Thank you, Mr. Gregerson. And again, we just can't emphasize that point enough. Another thing that I want people to consider and start understanding is the impact it's going to have academically. Some schools that I have spoken to, and again, I want you to know how people are viewing this. some schools around the country that if kids are in season, they're asking, or in fact, they're mandating that the kids stay remote during that season. We're not in that mode at all. We're actually working with Miss Larson right now to figure out how to do this safely. And she's, the work that it will take will be significant to change these schedules once again. And not only to have to change them, but they will have to change every 6 weeks because that's the length of each season. And in order to allow those kids that want to participate in more than one sport and not have to be remote, it's going to take a Herculean effort to get there. And she and her staff are willing to go there. But again, this stresses the importance of having these testing protocols in place by the time we get there. Because if we have to separate in the way that we're going with the platinum and sapphire, that if the athletes go into one group and the kids not in season go in the other group, that's a possibility that we may have to go into. So this is all being planned out right now because everybody in this building wants to make sure that we have our seasons and they're not interrupted and the kids academically continue to do what they're doing here. So please understand that we are in a phase that's going to take significant time to get this perfected in order so it to not to impact the kids negatively. Mask wearing. So I think the kids and the coaches have been pretty good. They haven't been perfect, but they're easy to talk to. I know that the kids don't love it. I don't love it. And I have shared that a lot. I said, look, in fact, I dislike it, but it's the right thing to do. And we're in a situation that what we're looking at CDC guidelines, looking at the National Federation of High Schools, and we're classifying every sport. We're putting them in different tiers to understand which ones are going to need to wear masks, particularly indoor sports that are not high intensity. That's one of them that we're being recommended to. So we're looking at which ones those are. We're not going to ask the high intensity sports outdoors to wear masks, but we're looking at other safety precautions in football, in baseball, in basketball that we are purchasing to protect the kids to the highest level. Because the one thing I've learned talking to the NIAA since August, that we're on our own. Every school is on their own in terms of how they're going to protect their student athletes and their community. They're not even mandating whether a school has to tell you if someone's been exposed to COVID or not. And other states are, they're mandating it. Here they're telling you, look, we're going with the honor system. And, the way people are in the competitive world, if it's a star player on a team that might have been exposed, we're not going to hear about it. So we have to do everything we can to protect ourselves, but to continue to allow the kids to compete. So please understand that we are looking at all this. And again, it's going to take a little time, but what we're doing is trying to stay as proactive and engaged with you so you know where we are, what we're trying to do, and keep you as involved as possible. We will have you take a look at schedules and we'll have you kind of give us some feedback. And if you have any concern, if we have to make changes, we'll make them. But right now, if sports were to start here today, we would have no fans on campus. We would be just the coaches, the athletes, any security and any training staff, any medical staff, and that would be it at this point. Very similar to what we see with our professional teams here in town, that we want to see these games go on, and we're trying to figure out from all angles the best way to make sure that you get to see everything. The good news is in one of our gymnasiums we have the huddle system set that we brought in last year, so we're comfortable that people will get to see all the activities in the gym. And again, this is a moving target, and we're going to continue to talk about it. I don't want you to think that anything is totally etched in stone, but if we're going to do this right, this is how we're going to do it here until we get something that assures us that everything is going to be okay. I knew that would be a big one, and I'm sure that, and I want to get your feedback on that one because I know how hard it will be. I know how hard it will be on the students, and I know how hard it will be on the parents. But we just have to cooperate with each other and make sure that, both sides, as Mr. Gregerson, continue to trust each other in this process. I am very I'm very proud of what the kids have been doing and the coaches that have been spending the time since we really began it and opened our doors back open. Our coaches are spending, their time and putting themselves at their high risk to be here for the kids, on the days they're assigned. And it has been really amazing to watch the level of enthusiasm. And at this point, we've gotten over 50% of our kids that are here completely voluntary, not because they have to be, but because they want to be during a time like this, working hard. And I think it's been a really good thing to see happening here. And again, it's important to acknowledge what the coaches and what our human performance staff, Mr. Sams, has done to provide this for the kids. And again, we're starting to expand it. The idea was to get the kids ready. So when those seasons began, they would be at a very high level and in good shape, ready for that. And right now we're starting to open from really the training to we're going to start conditioning the kids and start getting them ready for the next phase of this, to get them really, we want them injury free. We want them healthy. We want them to see and confident throughout this process. So we're working on that. The next phase is coming in, and we'd like to see more kids involved. If they feel comfortable to come out here and get involved in what we're doing. But it's been a challenge. But again, I thank everybody for the efforts that they have endured to make sure that this happens. Transportation for 2 events right now is still a work in progress. We have to figure out how we're going to get them to games safely, appropriately, and we're looking at everything right now. We have our buses here, how we're going to utilize them to get them to and from. We're looking at what we're going to do for opposing teams too. We're looking at everything categorically. I've asked every single head coach in every sport to really break down every scenario from start to finish, from every practice to every game, all the way from to the end of their season, what we have to prepare for, that in writing, we will have every question answered for them so that we can move forward and, be successful in this whole process. But as I said to the coaches, my interest here in this 6 weeks that each season has is to make sure we do it to the best of our ability, that we do it to the safest of our ability, and that no longer no longer is anything taken from our student athletes during this time. It's important to us, but again, our priorities are going to be different from everybody else. So let me, I don't want to overload people on information, but this is kind of the start of where we're at. And we're going to have to continue to do this as we get closer and closer. So if you have any questions, thoughts, you can certainly include them today on this webinar, or you can send them to me directly. But we're looking at every area, every category that we can possibly look at to make sure we cover everything. So I do see a couple questions that I'm going to post here, put up. The pre-screening. So how is the pre-screening different from the PCR? Is it a baseline? So the pre-screening, both of them are basically the idea of being able to pool test is so we can do it more often. It's a very inexpensive test. One is actually very inexpensive, and one right now, because it's a pilot program, is completely free. And the idea is this: they both provide information. One does it from the saliva, that the saliva is tested in a lab, and then the pool comes back to us. And if anything comes back positive, we know since we're doing it by team, we know who to target and go back and check. So if they come back positive twice, and what we do is move to the PCR test, which right now is the gold standard test. And again, what we may find is that a lot of those tests could come back negative, but we want to make sure, right? We just want to be 100% sure, as close as we can on both ends of this, that we look at this as an opportunity to test frequently. Like, that's the whole idea. We're not relying on the pre-screening devices and the test as the end all be all. It is a way to move us into the next phases to ensure, to confirm that these tests are as accurate as possible, and that we're not spreading any virus amongst our teams. That's what we're using it as. I think it's fantastic to mandate weekly testing. for a student that wants to participate in any type of school-related sport or practice. We're in agreement with you. I know this is a very delicate subject. The good part about the two pre-screen is the kids are de-identified. They both are identified by a number. And if we need to, if Kim needs to go back, she's really the only one that sees the result, and she can go back and trace to the student. Nobody else sees that. So she will be the only person on the test that know the results for an individual. And Kim is really our pandemic coordinator. So she's working on both the PCR test and on the pre-screening devices. So we like the idea of de-identifying and not having it follow the kids by name, because we don't want that information ever to get out there, whether someone's positive or negative. We believe in the privacy of the individual, and what would happen if anything came back positive is Ms. Jacobs would contact the family and just say, look, we're having them do that pre-screener again for confirmation. And if it comes back again in a positive way, then she will say, we are going to test them with our PCR test, and then we will know what to do. But we will continue to pre-screen the kids so that nothing, again, it won't raise any alarms if they're used to just doing this on a daily basis or on a weekly basis if we have to. But they're so, one of them is so easy we can do every day. The other, probably a little more challenging and probably can only do about once a week.
If I could just add
please.
a little bit of color to the pool testing. If you want to take a quick look and just do a Google search, right now, Wynn Resorts is utilizing the same pool testing technology that we're using. They're actually partnering with UMC to build a lab inside the Wynn. My hope is that we can start moving our samples over to the Wynn as opposed to back east. So right now we're overnighting them back east to the laboratory, but they have partnered with the Wynn to actually open a laboratory here in Las Vegas. And if you just search for the Wynn and their pool testing, they're actually trying to reopen the Strip by doing some pretty remarkable things, giving people one of these saliva-based tests, non-invasive saliva-based tests, so that they can say, hey, you're clear for 2 days. You can go to a concert and go to this conference, and we're not worried about you being contagious for 2 days. If we have that kind of opportunity where we can pool test everybody every week, that's within 7 days of contact, we're going to be able to effectively eliminate the movement of the contagion in our student athletes and really around the upper school. So we're excited about what this might mean. And by the way, that saliva-based test is a PCR-based test. It just it isn't person by person, right? So we save in terms of the cost, and we're not paying for hundreds and hundreds of negative tests, right? So you pay a lot less because you're doing it in bulk and you get economies of scale. I do want to reiterate what Claude said about it being anonymous, though. You're not identified, your students are not identified by their samples, unless, of course, they end up positive. And then we want you to know, and I'm sure you want to know if your child has been exposed. So I'm happy to answer all kinds of questions about that pool testing. I've been in contact with the laboratory, the doctor who does it, and the rest of those professionals. So I've been in on the ground floor from that for that one, and I'm just really hopeful that that's going to move quickly to the Strip so we can take part in that. I think there's another question about other schools, Claude, and not an easy one to answer.
Well, I won't make the promise today, but at some point I will, because what we're going to do is we know who we're playing, and we have relationships with all these schools, or with almost all of them. And that's going to be a very important piece of this. We're going to set up a meeting with them about, since the governing body is not going to set up a protocol, we're going to do one with them. And we're going to ask them all to agree that we're going to do this correctly and that we're going to hold each other to this standard. Because, look, we want to play. They want to play. But we're not going to put anybody at risk for us, for these situations. We're going to do this right. And I believe we can build a really good trust system with them, where we'll talk every week about how we're going to do it. And we'll continue to stay very proactive with these schools. But look, a lot of these schools are actually expressing concern of the Meadows coming to their community, where their community has had minimal to none. And we're a place that has had significant cases in Las Vegas, and they're more concerned about us coming in many ways. So I think those schools will actually embrace that. So we're going to really build on that. We're going to create a good system with the schools we're competing with. But the question was, how do we ensure competing schools do not fall dangerously short? We're not going to count on anybody else to do it for us. We will do it with them. And I believe that we can do this with them. So it's important to note that, look, colleges and the pro athletes are doing what we're doing. You know, they're mandating these tests. They're making, in fact, in some cases, they're tracking where their players are going everywhere. We're not doing that. Like we got to be responsible for when they're on our campus and they're competing. We got to make sure. And but you really have to take a look around and talk to people, and you just won't find another school that is doing the things that we are doing on a weekly basis. They're doing it maybe a one-up, we'll do it one time. And I know schools that aren't doing anything, and they're just saying, go play. We're not going to worry. You know, whatever happens, happens. And I can assure you that is not going to happen here. So our standards are very high. Our expectations are very high. And, you know, we have used this time wisely to really analyze the best methods that people have used, and we're going to incorporate them as we get closer. But what we really wanted to emphasize to you is that we want you to tell your kids, we can't wait to get back out there. We're going to play. This school is doing everything for you, and understand that we just need to work together with them. But we're going to do everything possible to prevent any disruption once that begins. And that's what we're working towards right now. So please tell your kids that we are ready to go, that our mindset is ready, our coaches are ready. We just need to get everybody on board, and we will continue to communicate with you once we have everything, kind of every box checked going forward. But any comments, any questions, any suggestions, we're welcome to them, because this is something that nobody's ever done. We need to handle this as a community. So I thank you for all of your support, and thank the kids for being, they've been amazing. I mean, they really, they're working hard. They're wearing their mask, and they don't complain about it. They just get it done. And they seem happy to me, but they also seem antsy. Like, it's time. We got to start playing. So tell them we're ready to go. Thank you. Any other questions, any other thoughts before we end this broadcast? Mr. Gregerson, any last comments?
Question. There is one final question about club athletes in the same protocol. What are we doing about club athletes? Nothing is the answer to that question. We cannot control, unfortunately, the things that families choose to do, which is why we just have to continually reiterate that we're all in this together. We're responsible to one another. The success of our school, the success of our community, the success of our student athletes and their season is going to be dependent on us, on how well we take care of each other. So I understand that there are students who are really excited about playing in their club sports leagues, that's an outlet for them in some ways. I would just ask that you continue to be as careful as possible and rethink, the importance of some of those activities in the face of what we're up against. So thank you for that question. I think it is a sensitive question, and it's tough. And really, for me, I can't say enough about how proud I am of the kids, of the entire athletic department. I just want to say we're gonna hit bumps in the road. You look at what's happened in college football. There are teams traveling without 14 of their players. I mean, we've got to stare this down, and we're going to have some bumps in the road, but we're going to come out the other side because of positive and appropriate planning on the part of Mr. Grubair and Ms. Larson and the rest of the professionals in the building. So thank you so much for your support. It looks like there's one last question before we sign off.
The question is, would you consider allowing 2 parents per athlete to watch in person, as the limit is 250 at events? The good news is that we're not doing it today. So we have some time to really figure this out. So would we consider it? Absolutely. And, I was going to sign off by saying this, and not to rub it into people, but I know you can't be here to see what's happening right now, but I can tell you the kids look great. I mean, you just see the transformation going on in that fitness room and in their particular sports. I'm watching the level of improvement just happening. That's why we're excited. So, and we certainly want to share that. So we're going to figure that how to do this, right? I mean, we're starting at ground zero where we're saying right now we couldn't do it, but that doesn't mean come January we haven't figured out the safest way to do it at that point. So yeah, we will be considering that and understand that every conversation goes to that, that we have to figure out how to get, you know, have some support here for those kids. So yeah, we're working on it.
These things are on the table. I mean, we've got to do what's right, and we're going to continually stare these things down. I want to be able to have parents come and be on campus and be a presence, but I'm also committed to our 3 pillars, right? First things first, we got to make sure that we're taking every precaution that we can to protect your children.
Okay. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
I appreciate your time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.